In this tutorial, I will show you how to create these customizable Christmas lights using geometry nodes in Blender. And this is also a product which I'm selling on my Gumroad store, as well as the Blender market and some other online marketplaces. So if you'd like to purchase the project files and help support the channel, the links will be in the description. And you can also get access to the project files if you join my Patreon page. So after following this tutorial, you will have this curve object, and if you go into edit mode and extrude out the curve, the lights are going to adapt to the shape of that curve. So you can scale the handles of the curve and move it around, and the Christmas lights are going to follow along. And so these geometry node Christmas lights are very customizable, and so you could add them to a Christmas tree, you could also put them on a house, or add them to some rafters, or just any decoration in your 3D scenes. And after this tutorial, if you'd like to learn how to create more Christmas themed tutorials, then definitely check out my Christmas tutorial playlist with the link in the description. And in that playlist, you can learn how to create Christmas ornaments. You can also learn how to create a Christmas tree and other Christmas tutorials. And then what's also really cool about this setup is that I can extrude out these curves here, and then I can press Alt S, and Alt S is going to change the size of the curve, so I can make it thicker if I wanted to. And we're also going to be creating a custom Christmas light shader so that we can get different colored lights. So there is a blue and purple one, there's also this white yellow one, and then there's also this colorful one here. We're also going to be making a candy cane one, there's also this purple one here, and the green red as well. That's pretty cool. We also have a blue light, and then also this custom color. So when you plug the custom color into the surface, you can use this custom color right here on the node, and you can change it to whatever color you want. And then as well as that, we're also going to be creating this really cool node here within the geometry nodes to change all the settings of the lights. So the first one here is the wire subsurf. So if you zoom in really close to the wires, if I turn the wire subsurf down, you can see they're going to be lower poly, or if I turn the wire subsurf up, it's going to be more smooth. Then we also have this random light placement, and so if you change this, it's going to randomly change where the lights are. Then we also have the random light rotation, so this is going to keep the light bulbs where they are on the string, but it's going to give them random rotations. And then there also is this wire twist, so if you turn this up, you can see that the wires are going to rotate more and more, or if you turn the wire twist down, you can now see that those wires aren't rotating quite as much. And then we also have this wire thickness, so if you turn this up, you can see that the wires are going to be thicker or thinner. Then we also have this light bulb amount, so we'll be able to turn up the light bulb amount if we want there to be more space between all the bulbs, or you could turn this way down if you want there to be much more lights. And then there also is this light bulb scale, so we can use this to scale the size of the light bulbs. And then we also have the wire randomized, so if you've ever taken a close look at Christmas lights, they usually have 3 lights, and they're usually kind of tangled around over each other. And so with the wire randomized, you can just randomize where those wires are placed. And as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to help support the channel and purchase these customizable lights, then you can do that with the links in the description. I'll have this on the Blender market, as well as my Gumroad store and my Patreon page, and some other digital marketplaces. And if you'd like to help support this channel here on YouTube, you can also check out the YouTube memberships by clicking down there on the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you enjoy this tutorial and you'd like to send me a little tip, you can also use the super thanks feature here on YouTube, and I do appreciate all of your support. Now right now I've been previewing this in Blender Eevee because I'm using the material preview, and the material preview uses Eevee's settings. But these Christmas lights also work really well in the Cycles rendering engine as well, so if you want to go for more realism, you can totally use Cycles. Now in the Cycles rendering engine, you aren't able to get that bloom effect. You can see right here in Blender Eevee, you're able to get this really cool real-time bloom effect, but in Cycles it doesn't have that. So if you're rendering this with Cycles, then in Blender's compositor, you'll be able to add the glare nodes, and the glare nodes will give you that really cool glowing effect. So here I am in a new scene in Blender, and I'm using Blender 3.4, which is currently the stable version. And also, if you want to see my screencast keys, they're going to be right down here in the corner so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I'm going to start by selecting the camera and also holding down the shift key and selecting the light, and I'll press X and let's click on delete. Now I want to model this to the real life scale in Blender, and the default cube is about the average human height. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to go here to curve curve, and I'm going to add the Bezier. And then I'm going to select the cube, and I'm just going to move it over on the y-axis. We're just using the default cube for now to get an idea of the size of the real life scale. So I'm now going to select the curve again, and I will press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I'm going to select this curve right here, and I want to rotate this, and then I will rotate it on the z-axis, and I'm going to type in 45, and then I'm actually going to hit negative to rotate it by negative 45, and then hit enter. And that way the curve is straight. And then I can scale the entire curve down. I could also select these handles here and scale them down a bit. And then I'm going to press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I'm going to start to just make these look like they're hanging by some rafters. So I'm going to select this handle here. I'll press R to rotate and G to grab. I'm going to move this over here. Then I can select this one, and I'm going to scale this up a bit and kind of move it down, something like that. And so I think these hanging lights should be about half the size of the cube, and that way they'll be about half the size of a person height. So I'm now going to select this handle here. I'll press E to extrude. I'm going to bring it up, and then I want to scale it down just like that. Then I can press E to extrude again. I'm going to scale this one up, and this one maybe I'll have come down a little bit more. And then this one here I can have maybe coming up a little bit. All right, so I can now select this handle here, and I can press E to extrude. I can bring it up, and then I can scale it down just like that. So I want it to be at the same spot on the very top to look like maybe it's hanging on some rafters or something. But of course you can model this however you want. I'll press E to extrude again, bring this down, and I can scale it up a bit. Maybe bring it up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to press the tab key to go back to object mode, and I can just select the cube, and then I will press X and click on delete because I don't really need it. I just wanted to use it as a guide for our size. So I'll tab to go into edit mode. I can maybe bring this up, and then I can extrude it up, and I'm just going to continue to do this and kind of make some hanging lights. And I want to scale the handles up when they're on the bottom, and that way it's going to be a more smooth curve. But then right up here on the top, I want to scale this down, and that way the handles will make it more sharp. And then I can extrude this up again. So just continue to do that until you have an object that you like. And then in object mode, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go here to mesh, and I'm going to add another cube, and I'm just going to use this cube to make a little rafter object. So I'll tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to scale the entire thing down. I can also scale it on the y-axis to make it a bit thinner, and then I can also scale the entire thing up on the x-axis, and then maybe scale it down. And I can press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and I'm going to tab to go to object mode, and then I can press G to grab, and I'm just going to move this up here and just stick it right there so that the lights have something to hang on. Let's save this Blender file. So I'm now going to click right up here on File, and then you can click on Save As. And I will just save this as christmaslights.blend on my computer, and I'll click on Save As. And then as you're working on the project, you can press Ctrl S to save the Blender file. Alright, so I'm now going to be modeling the light bulb object. So I'm going to press Shift A, I'm going to go here to Mesh, and I'm going to add a cylinder. And then as soon as you add the cylinder, right behind me, there's that little arrow there, the Add Cylinder Settings, and you can just click on that to open it up. So when you open this up, you're going to have some settings to change the primitive object. So I'm going to take the vertices here on the cylinder, and I'm just going to change this to 14. I do want to make this lower poly because we are going to be instancing it on the wire. And so if it's lower poly, the performance will be a bit better. So I can now close the Add Cylinder Settings, and then using the Object Context menu, I can shade the object smooth. And then I will press the Tab key to go into edit mode, and let's model the light. So I'm going to start by scaling the object way down in edit mode so that it is much smaller. I'm going to make it probably about this big, and then I can press the period on the numpad to zoom into it. Then I'm going to press the 1 on the numpad to go to front view. Then I will hold down the Alt key, and I'm just going to select this loop of vertices right here, so the loop on the top. And I'm going to bring it up on the Z-axis. Then I can press E to extrude to bring this out again, and then I'm going to scale this way down and make it smaller. And then I want to have that little circular bit on the top, so I'll press E to extrude, place it there, S to scale, we're going to bring that up, and then extrude it again with the E key, bring that up a bit more, and then extrude it one more time, and we're going to scale that down just to make that little circular bit on the top. And then I can press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and using the Object Context menu, I will shade the object smooth. And then I'm also going to press the Tab key to go into edit mode. I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut right here, and I can left click and right click so it stays in the center, and then I could just scale this down a little bit, and that way there's going to be a little bit of rounding there. That looks a bit better. Alright, so that is pretty good. So I now want to model the socket of the light bulb. So I'm going to select this object. I will press tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to hold down the alt key and select that loop of vertices right there. I can now press Shift D to duplicate it, and let's bring it down on the Z-axis and place it there. And then I want it to be its own object, so with those vertices selected, I'm going to press the P key, and then I can click on Selection, and that way it'll be its own object. And then press the tab key to go back to object mode, and I'm just going to select this new object, and I will tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to press the A key to select everything, and I'm going to scale this up so it's a bit bigger. I can also press 1 on the numpad to go to front view. I'll scale it up a bit more, and then I can also bring it up on the Z-axis and bring it up like that. Then I will press E to extrude. Let's bring this down, place it there, and I can scale this up a little bit, and then I will press E to extrude again and bring this down to about there. And then I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel to add 2 loop cuts, and I can left click and right click so it stays in the center. Then I want to scale the entire thing down on the Z-axis a bit, and I can press G to grab and bring the entire thing down on the Z-axis and just place it there. So I now want to extrude this in to kind of make a little inset. So I'm going to press E to extrude, and then I will hit S to scale, and then I don't want to scale it on the Z-axis, so I'm going to hit Shift Z to exclude the Z-axis, and I'll just bring it there and place it there. Then I can hold down the Alt key and select this loop again, and I want to bring it down even more. So I'm going to kind of zoom out here, and I'll press G to grab and bring it down on the Z-axis and just bring that down. And I think I want to select the entire thing in edit mode, and I can scale the entire thing down a bit and then maybe bring it up on the Z-axis. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices again. And then I can zoom in here to the bottom again and hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices. And I'll press 1 on the numpad to go back to front view. So I now can press E to extrude, bring that down, and I want to scale this entire thing down, make it a bit smaller, and maybe bring it up on the Z-axis a little bit. And then I can press E to extrude again, and we'll just bring that down there. And you can tab to go back to object mode, and there we go, we have the light socket. Now in object mode, you can use the object context menu, and I'm going to use the shade auto smooth. Now I hit the W key for the object context menu because I use the right click select, but you can also just right click and then click on the shade auto smooth. And I want to use the shade auto smooth because I want the round parts right here to be smooth, but then I want the edges to be sharp. Whereas if I just shaded this smooth, the entire thing would be smooth and it doesn't look that good. So I'm going to shade auto smooth, and that looks really great. And this will keep the object nice and low poly, so it'll be better for distributing on the wire. So I now want to model a little piece here inside the light bulb, which is going to be an emission material so that it will actually be emitting light. So I'm going to select this object here, and I will press the H key to hide it. Then I can select the socket piece, and I'll press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I'm going to click right up here to go to the face select. And I can just select this face. And I'm going to press the I key to inset the face, and I'm going to bring it down and make it much smaller. And then I can press the E key to extrude it up, and I'm just going to bring it up there. So this piece right here, that piece is going to be an emission material, so it'll actually be emitting light. So I can tab to go back to object mode, and then I can press Alt H to unhide the other object. I now want to join these objects together, so I'm first going to select the light bulb and then hold down the Shift key and select the light socket. And then you can press Ctrl J to join them together. Alright, so that is it for that object. So I'm now just going to select the curve object, and we're going to start doing the geometry nodes. So if you already have a geometry nodes layout, you can just go to that in the workspaces. I need to add a new geometry nodes layout, so I'm going to click on the plus right here to add a new layout, and then I can go to general, and then I'm going to go down here and add the geometry nodes, and this will add a new layout. Now there are a few things that I want to change. One thing is that I actually don't really need to use the spreadsheet. I just don't need it. So what I'm going to do is hover my mouse right here in the corner of the 3D viewport, and I can click, and then I can drag over and then let go, and that is going to close that panel. I can also click on this button right here because I don't want to see the gizmo, and also I can press the T key to get rid of that side panel. Now you can have it up and down if you want, but I actually prefer to have one one window over here and the other window over here. So I'm going to move my mouse here into the center, and I'm going to right click, and then I can click on vertical split. And I can just stick that in the center, and you can see it's going to split the window. And then I want to make the 3D viewport on this side. So what I'm going to do is hover my mouse in the corner when the crosshair appears, and I can click and then drag down and then let go. And that is going to just bring that 3D viewport down. And then I can also click right here in the corner, drag up and let go just to close that. So now we have the 3D viewport over here and the geometry nodes over here. I'm also going to make this smaller so we have lots of space. So just select the curve object, and then I want to click on the new button to add new geometry nodes. And we can just rename the geometry nodes to Christmas lights. And then I will also be using the Node Wrangler add-on in this tutorial. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler enabled, you can click on Edit and you can go to the Preferences, and then over there in the Add-ons tab, just search for Node Wrangler and checkmark the Node Wrangler add-on. The add-on is built into Blender, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. So the first thing that I want to make is 3 different wires, and I want the 3 wires to go along the curve. Now you could create 2 wires if you want to. Some Christmas lights do just have 2 wires, but it seems like most Christmas lights do have 3 different wires. So we want to create the shape of those wires, and then we're going to make the wires move along this curve. So to do this, in the geometry node setup, I'm going to press Shift A, and then I can hit the S key to go to the search. And I'm going to search for the curve circle. Let's add the curve circle node. And I can just drop the curve circle right down here. And then because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, I can hold down the Control and Shift key and select the curve circle. And that's going to add this viewer node here in the geometry nodes, and we can actually preview that object. And if you're using an older version of Blender, then this may not work because this was a newer feature added to Blender. So what you can also do is just hold down the Shift and Alt key and select different objects, and that is also going to preview it. But I'm going to use the viewer node here by Control Shift and selecting the different nodes. And then also I just want to preview this object for now. So what I'm going to do is hit the / on my numpad, and that is going to go into local view of the object. So we can just preview this object. Or if you want to, you could just hide the other objects just to get them out of the way. Now I want to make this a lower poly because we definitely don't need the resolution up this much. So I'm going to turn the resolution here to an 8 on the curved circle. And that way it is much more low poly, and it does look pretty low poly, but once we're zoomed out and once this is going along the wire, you won't be able to notice that it's low poly. Now I want to have 3 of these circles because I want to have 3 different wires. So if I press 7 on the numpad to go to top view, I want to have the 3 wires kind of evenly placed around here. So to do that, I can press Shift A, I'm going to hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the transform node. And I'm going to put the transform node here after the curve circle. So now I can use the transform values, the X and Y values on the translation here, to move the circle around. And I can also hold down the Shift key if I want to make my movements more sensitive. So I'm going to bring this over here, and then I can also bring this up, and I just want to stick it kind of right up here so it's over to this side. Now I want to have 3 of them, so what I'm going to do is select this transform, and I'm going to press Control Shift D. So Control Shift D will duplicate the node, but it'll keep the wires plugged up. And I'm going to bring this back here. So now we have 2 transforms. Now I want to be able to preview these transforms together. So to do that, I can press Shift A, hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the join geometry node. And let's stick the join geometry after this transform. So now the viewer can preview the join geometry. And then I want to take this other transform that we duplicated, and I want to put the geometry into the join geometry. So this way we can preview both of the transforms. So I now want to take this other transform and I just want to move it over, and you can see because I'm moving it over, because we have 2 transforms, it is creating 2 different circles. So I'm going to bring this one a little bit down and also bring it over here, just something like that. And then I also want to make one more. So I'm going to bring the curved circle back, and I can take this transform here, and I'm going to press Control Shift D. So Control Shift D will duplicate the node, but it'll keep these wires plugged up. And then I want to put this transform into the geometry as well. So now I can hold down the Shift key and I can drag the X and Y values, and I can move this over, and I just want to make a third one. And I want to bring this over here. So now you can see we have 3 different circles, and they're all really close to each other. So this is now the shape of the wires, but the wires don't have any thickness. And so I want to make this shape go along the curve. So to do this, I want to take the curve and I want to turn it into a mesh. So I'm going to press Shift A, I'm I'm going to hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the curve to mesh node. So we're going to take the curve to mesh and we're going to put it in between the group input and the group output. And then I can Control Shift and select the curve to mesh to preview it. So it looks exactly the same. But now you can see right here with this curve to mesh, there is a profile curve. And this profile curve is the shape of the curve. So what I can do is click and drag to box select these nodes and I can bring them down. And then I'm going to take the join geometry and I'm going to put this into the profile curve. So now you can see that the shape that we made with this curved circle is now going to be the shape of the curve. Now it is way too big, so we need to make it smaller. Now what you could do is you could go over here to the curved circle and you could take the radius and just turn the radius down. But if you do that, then they're going to be farther apart and so it's actually going to be messed up. And just to preview what's going on, I'm going to Control Shift and select the join geometry to preview it. So now if I zoom in here, if I change the radius for the curved circle, it's going to scale each circle down and then it's going to transform it and move it over. So I actually don't want to do this. I want to turn the radius back to 1, which is the default. So what I want to do instead is add another transform and then we're going to scale it down, and that way it'll scale all of them down together because we're going to add it after the join geometry. So what I can do is click on one of these transform nodes and I can press Shift D to duplicate it, and let's stick it right here after the join geometry but before the profile curve. And then I also want to reset the values, so with the transform node selected you can hit the backspace and that's going to reset the values. And then I can Control Shift and select the transform node to preview it. So now I can take the scale values and I can just scale it down, and to scale all the values at the same time I can click right here on the X scale and then I can drag down and then I can drag back and forth, and you can see it's going to scale all the values at the same time. And because this transform node is after the join geometry, it's going to scale them up and down all together. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A, I'll hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the math node, and we're going to stick the math node right down here. And then what we want to do is take the value and we're going to put that into the scale. And then this bottom value here, I'm just going to turn that to 0. And then this top value, I can just turn this to 1 for now. So now you can just drag this value, and you can also hold down the Shift key as you drag it to make your movements more sensitive, and it's going to scale all of the scale values at once. So now let's Control Shift and select the curve to mesh node to actually preview it. So I now want to go back to this add here to the math node, and I want to hold down the Shift key and scale this down, and I want to make it much smaller. And now you can see that it is actually the correct size. Now on the math node, I'm going to change the value to a 0.004. I think 0.004 is pretty good, so now it is pretty small. But if you zoom over here to the end, if I kind of zoom out here and kind of zoom in really close, you can see that there are our 3 circles, and the 3 circles are just being extruded along the curve because they're going into the profile curve. Now if you look at real Christmas lights, the lights are all random and twisty, and they're also rotating around as they go down the wire. And so I want to make these twisted because right now if you look closely, you can see that they're all super smooth and straight, and so I want to have them twisting. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, I'm going to hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the set curve tilt. We want to add the set curve tilt node, and we want to put this node before the curve to mesh node. So now if I change this tilt value right here, you can see it's going to rotate around. And if I zoom right here to the end, if I rotate the tilt, you can see it's just going to rotate it around. Now I don't just want the entire wire to rotate together, I want it to twist more and more as it goes down the wire. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift A, I'm going to hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the index node. And we're going to plug the index node into the tilt. And so the index node is going to make it so that as it goes down, it rotates more and more. So instead of it rotating all together, it's going to rotate like a screw. Now you can see that it's still not rotating very much. And so I want to give the tilt more detail. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, I'll hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the resample curve. So let's add the resample curve node, and I want to put this before the set curve tilt. And then we can change the count here, and the count is going to change how detailed it is. So you can see right now the count is turned to 10, so it's like super low poly, but if I turn this count up, it's going to give it much more geometry. So if I kind of zoom in here to a sharp area, I can turn this way up, and you can see now it's going to rotate around. So now it kind of looks like some rope. So I can continue to turn the count way up to like over 1,000, and you can see it's basically rotating around and it kind of looks like some rope or some thread. Now I want to turn the count to 500. I think 500 is pretty good, but you can definitely change this depending on the size of your wire. And we're also going to be using this value later in the custom group to make the twist amount. But for my object, I'm just going to set the count to 500. Now I also want to make the wires more tangled and random because the wires are actually very close to each other. And if you've looked at real Christmas lights, then you'll notice that the wires aren't super close to each other. They're kind of random and tangled. So to do this, we can just change the transform values here on the curved circle. So I can hold down the shift key and then I can drag the X and Y values. And as I drag these out, it's going to make them farther away from each other. And just to show you, I'm going to Control Shift and select this join geometry right here. And I'm going to navigate here to top view. So now if I move around these values, it's going to move them farther apart from each other. And if they're farther apart from each other, then they're going to look more tangled and random because they'll be farther apart. So I'm going to Control Shift and select the curve to mesh. So I can now zoom in here and I'm just going to move these values farther apart from each other, and that's going to move those circles. And so now it looks more tangled and random. So you can just kind of move these around until they're how you like. And I generally wouldn't move the Z value very much. You could move the Z value if you want to, but if you go here to the very end, if you move the Z value, it's going to change where the starting and end is. And I don't really want that. I just want to move the X values and the Y values to kind of make it look more tangled. So just something like that. So if I zoom in there, you can see they just look kind of tangled and there's kind of some space in between the wires. Now, if you zoom in closely to the wire, you can see that some of the edges aren't very sharp. And so I want to add the subdivision surface node to give it more geometry. So I'll press Shift A, let's hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the subdivision surface node. And we want to add the subdivision surface node after the curve to mesh. And then I can Control Shift and select the subdivision surface to preview it. So on default, the levels is set to 1. So if I turn it to 0, you can see it's kind of sharp. If I turn it up to 1, it's more smooth. And if I turn it up to 2, you can see it's even more smooth. Now, I don't want this to be too laggy, so I'm just going to turn the levels to 1. And for the most part, you're going to be viewing this from a bit farther away. So I think just turning the level to 1 will be great. But now it's more detailed. Now, if you select the curve and press the tab key to go into edit mode to edit the curve, you may notice that you're not actually able to see the handles, and that is because of this viewer node. So I can select the viewer node and press X to delete it, and now you're able to see those dots there, and if I select the dot, you can now see the handle. So if for some reason you can't see it, just make sure you delete the viewer node, and also if you scroll right up here on the top, you do need to make sure that the show overlays is on so that you can preview it. So I'm gonna press Control Spacebar, and that's gonna go into full screen of the 3D view, and you can now see that I can extrude this by hitting the E key to extrude, and I can scale it, and I can rotate it, and I can really just create any wire shape that I want, and the 3 wires are going to move along with it. So that is super cool. So I will just select both of these handles by holding down the shift key and selecting both handles, and then I can press X to delete, and let's delete the vertices. So I can now press Control Spacebar, and that'll go back out of full screen mode, or you can also click on the back to previous. Let's tab to go back to object mode, and I can press Control S to save. So I now need to add the lights onto this curve. So let's do that. So I will press Shift A, let's hit S for the search, and I want to search for the instance on points node. So let's add the instance on points, and we're going to put the instance on points here after the subdivision surface. Now when I do this, you can see that the wire disappears, and so to fix this, I just need to press Shift A, and I'm going to go to the search, and I'm going to search for the join geometry node, and let's put the join geometry after the instance on points. And then I want to bring the instance on points down, and I want to take the subdivision surface. If I Control Shift and select this to preview it, you can see this is the wire, so I can click on the viewer node and press X to delete it. I want to take the mesh and I want to put this into the geometry. So this way we are joining the original geometry with the instance on points. So now we just need to give the instance on points an object to actually instance. So let's press Shift A. I can hit the S key for the search, and I'm going to search for the object info node. And let's drop this down here. And then I want to click here on the drop down, and I want to select the light object. Now I didn't actually rename this node, so what I'm going to do in the 3D viewport is hit the / on my numpad, and that's going to go out of local view just so that I I can preview all the objects. And then I want to click on the eyedropper here on the object info, and I can just select the light object. And then to just hide these objects from the view, I'm going to select the wire again, and I can hit the / on the numpad to go into local view so I can see that better. So I now want to take the geometry from the object info, and I want to put that into the instance on the instance on points. So now you can see that that object is being instanced all over the wire. Now I want the light object to be evenly placed all along the wire. I don't just want it to be all over the place. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the distribute points on faces node. So let's add the distribute points on faces, and I'm going to put this before the instance on points. And then I'm going to click on the random here, and I'm going to instead change this to the Poisson disk. So by changing this to the Poisson disk, we now have the distance min and the distance max. So we can use this to control how many lights are on the wire. Now if I zoom out here, you can actually see there are some of them, but there's not very many. So I want to turn the density max way up. So if we turn the density max way up, there's going to be much more of them. But then I don't want them to be all overlapping. I want there to be an even spacing between each instance. So I'm going to turn the distance min up. And if you turn the distance min up, now there's going to be an even spacing between each one of the lights. Now I want to play around with this more, but first I want to make the lights much smaller because they are way too big. So right here on the instance on points, we have a rotation and we also have a scale. And so I want to scale all of these scale values down just to make those lights smaller. Now I want to scale them down all at once. So I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to go here to the search, and I'm going to search for a math node, and let's stick the math node right down here. And I could just use a normal value node if you press Shift A and search for a value node. The value node is just a single value, and I could put that into the scale just to control a single value, but I want to be able to control the scale in the geometry node setup. So I'm going to delete the value. I want to use the add instead. So we're going to take the math node here set to add, and we're going to put the value into the scale. Then I want to take this bottom value right here, and I want to turn that to 0. And so now this value right here on the add is going to control the size of those lights. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and then click and drag on this value, and I'm going to turn this down and kind of get it to a size that you like. And I definitely recommend looking at some reference images or looking at real Christmas lights to kind of get it to the scale that you think looks good. So I'm going to go with something like that. It really is going to depend on the size of the lights, so how big you modeled the lights. So your value is probably going to be different than mine, but just kind of play around with this value and get it to a size that looks good. So now that we've made the lights much smaller, I want to go back up here to the distribute points on faces, and I want to have much more of them. Now I want the lights to be very evenly spaced, so I want to turn the density max way up. So I'm going to turn the density max up to a really large value of 10,000. So 10,000 is going to be the number 10 with 3 zeros at the end. So now it's going to make sure that there are lots of lights in any space that it can add them. So now we can turn the density min down, and if we turn the density min down, I'm also holding down the Shift key to make my movements more sensitive, you can see that it's going to evenly place lights all along the wire. So I'm going to turn my distance minimum value to 0.2. I think 0.2 is pretty good. That's going to be the distance in between each light. But you can of course change this to your liking. Now there is another problem, and that is that they are not being instanced from the very bottom of the light. So where the light would be connected to the wire. And why this is because the objects are going to be instanced from their origin. So we need to change the object's origin and make it down here, and then that way they'll be coming out at the correct spot. So what I'm going to do is hit the / on my numpad with my mouse hovered in the 3D viewport, and that is going to show me all the objects. And I can just make this smaller for now. So if you select the light object, you can see that the origin point is that little yellow or orange dot there, and that is where it's going to be instanced from. So what I want to do is select the light and then press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I'm going to press the A key to select all of the geometry. And I can press G to grab, and then I can bring it up on the Z axis, and I want to bring this up like way up here, maybe even bring it up a little higher so that that origin point is down there. So now that I've done that, if you look here on the lights, you can see the lights are coming out at the correct spot. So that is really great. And you can kind of play with this, move it up and down to get it to the spot that you like. So I'll press the tab key to go back to object mode. Now if you just select the wire again, there is another problem, and that is that the lights all have the same rotation and they don't have random rotations. If you go here to the instance on points, you can see that there are rotation values and I can change these to rotate the lights, but I want each light to have a random rotation and be coming out at a different rotation. So to fix this, I'm going to press Shift A, let's hit S for the search, and I'm going to search for the random value node. And I'll put the random value node right down here, and then what I'm going to do is actually bring the object info node back a bit, and I can bring the instance on points down a bit, and then I want to bring the random value right up here, and then I want to put the random value into the rotation. Before I do that though, I want to click on the float here, and I want to change this instead to vector. And then I can take the value and put that into the rotation. So now, because we changed this to vector, we have minimum values and maximum values. And so this is going to determine how much random values it's going to use. Now you can see that there are 3 values with the minimum and 3 values with the maximum, and that is controlling the X, Y, and Z values. And I want them to all be the same. So on the minimum values, I want these all to be 0, but then here on the maximum values, I want to turn these all way up, and that way it's going to use any rotation. So on the maximum here, I can click and then I can drag down and then I can let go. And this way we can change all the values at the same time. And I'm just going to type in a giant number like 100. And that way it's going to use tons of different random values. And so it's all going to be randomly rotated. So you can see each light now has a random rotation. And then you can also change this seed value right here. If you want to randomize the rotation, if you don't like how it is, you can just change the seed and it's going to randomly change the random values. So I now want to join all the geometry nodes together into a group, and then we're going to create custom values so that we can customize the Christmas lights. So what I'm going to do is click and drag, and I'm going to box select all these nodes down here, and then I also want to press B for the box select, and I want to box select all these nodes here. So basically you want to select all of the nodes in the geometry node setup, but you don't want to select the group input or the group output. So just all these other nodes here in the center. I now want to press Control G, and Control G is going to join them together into a node group. Let's also press Control S to save the Blender file. So if you press the Tab key, that is going to go out of the group, and I can just drag the group output and the group input closer to the node group. And then if you click on the node group to select it, you can click on this button right here, and that's going to go into the node group, or you can also press the Tab key with the node group selected. So when you're in the 3D viewport, you press the Tab key to go in and out of edit mode. So that's a good way to remember. If you select the node group, you can press the Tab key to go into edit mode of the node group. So you can basically see the nodes which are inside it. Now I also want to rename the node group, so let's click right here to rename this. And I'm going to rename this to Christmas Lights. And then also right here on the edge, I can click and drag and make it bigger because I do want to make it much bigger so we can actually see the values better. So now we can add all of the custom values to this node. So I'm going to select the Christmas Light geometry node here, and I'm going to press the Tab key to go into edit mode of the group. And the first custom value that I want to add is the subdivision surface. So if we go right here to the subdivision surface, we have this level here. So I want to pull out a wire from this level, and I want to drag this over, and you can kind of push it into the end, and that's going to move it over. And then I want to stick it into this extra slot here on the group input. Now if I press the Tab key to go out of the group, you can see that we have that level right there. And so we can change it. So if I kind of zoom in here to the wire, I can turn this up or turn it down, and you can see it's going to change the subdivision. Now I want to rename this, so what I'm going to do is press the Tab key again to go back into the group, and I'm going to press the N key to open up the side panel. Now if you click right over here on the group tab, you can see that there are the inputs and the outputs. So I want to click right here on this level, and I'm going to double click on it to rename this. And I'm going to rename this to Wire Subsurf and then hit enter. So now if I press the Tab key, you can see this says Wire Subsurf. So that is exactly what I want. So I will tab again to go into the group. So the next value that I want to add is the random light placement. And if you go over here to the distribute points on faces node, there is a seed value, and that seed value is going to control the randomness of where those lights are placed. So what I can do is just take the seed, and I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to stick this into the new slot here, the extra slot on the group input. And then right up here, I can double click on this to rename it. And I'm going to rename this one to random light placement. So now if I press tab to go out of the group, you can see we have random light placement, and I can just drag this around to make the lights randomized. Let's do the next one, so I'll tab back into the group. So the next one that I want to add is the random light rotation. And to do this, I can go right here to the random value node, and you can see that there's a seed on the random value. So I want to take a wire from the seed, bring this over here, and then again, I want to put it into the extra slot here. And then right up here on the seed, I can double click on this to rename it. And I'm going to rename this to random light rotation. So now if I press the tab key, you can see we have a random light rotation, and I can change this value to randomize the rotation of those lights. Let's press tab again. So the next custom value that I want to add is the amount of twisting of these wires. So to do that, we're going to take the resample curve count here, and you can see if I turn this up or turn this down, that's going to change the amount of twist. So I can pull out the wire here from the count, and I'm going to stick this into the next slot. And then right up here on the count, I can double click on this to rename it. And I'm just going to rename this to wire twist. All right, so the next one that I want to add is the wire thickness. And so if I go right over here to this curved circle, we have this radius right here, and I'm going to put this in there. So let's take the radius, and I can stick this into the next slot there. And then if I click right here on these little dots, I can drag this down to see this value. And I'm going to double click on it to rename it. And I'm going to rename this one to the wire thickness. All right, so the next one that I want to add is the lights amount. So if I go right over here to the distribute points on faces, I want to use this distance min value right here, because that is going to control how many lights there are and the distance in between each lights. So let's take a wire here. I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to stick this into the next empty slot. And then let's click on it right here, double click on it to rename it. And I'm going to rename this one to lights amount. All right, the next one that I want to add is the light size. So if we go right over here and go to this instance on points, there is this scale, and this add node here is controlling the size of those lights on this first value. So I can take a wire, and we're going to drag this all the way over here, and I'm going to put this into the next slot, and then let's double click on it right here to rename it. And I'm going to rename this one to lights size. All right, and then there's just 3 more values that I want to add, and that is that I want to be able to change the amount of randomness of each individual light. So to do that, we want to add the translation from these transform here, and then that way we can change the twistiness of each individual light. So I'm going to take the translation from each one of these transforms. Let's put that in there. So this translation here, put that in there, and then this one here, let's stick that there. And then I can just rename all these. So I'm going to make this bigger. You can click and drag and make this smaller if you need to, and I'm going to double click on the translation to rename it. And I'm going to rename this first one to wire randomize 1, and then if I double click on this to rename this, I can press Control C to copy, I can double click on this, and then I can press Control V to paste it, but then I will rename this one to wire randomize 2, and then double click on this to rename it, press Control V, and I'm going to rename this one to wire randomize 3. All right, so I can press Control S to save, and I will press the tab key to go out of the group, and I can press the N key to close the side panel. So there we go. We now have all these customizable settings. So we have the wire subsurf, that's going to change how detailed the wire is. We also have the random light placement, and we also have the random light rotation to rotate that around. We can also twist the wire. So if we want to make the wire more twisted or less twisted, we can change that. And then we also have the wire thickness, and that'll make each individual wire less thick or more thick. And then also, if you want to make the entire light less thick or more thick together, you can press the tab key to go into edit mode of the curve. You can just select any of the curve that you want to scale. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and select both of those handles, and then you can press Alt S, and Alt S is going to change the size of that. So if you want to make it bigger, you could just scale that up. And then we also have the lights amount, so that's going to change the spacing in between the lights. So the default is 0.2, but if you want to have much more lights or much less lights, you could change that. And then finally, we have the light size. So that's going to make the lights bigger or smaller. And then also we have the wire randomize, and I wouldn't really change the Z values because, as I mentioned earlier, if you go up here to the top, you can see changing the Z value is going to change where it starts and ends, but you can change the Y and the X values to kind of randomize that. All right, so other than adding the material to the wire, the geometry nodes is is finished. After we make the materials though, we are going to be adding the set material node and adding the material to the wires, but now I'm going to go over the materials. So let's press Ctrl S again to save, and to do the materials, I'm going to go right here to the shading workspace. And then I'm going to hold down the Z button and go into the material preview so that we can preview those materials. And you could totally use the Cycles rendering engine or the Eevee rendering engine. It will work great in both. So I'm going to select this object right here and press H to hide it just to get it out of the way. And I can also select this object here, the light, and just kind of move it up. So let's select the light object, and I'm first going to be creating the wire material. So right here in the shader editor, let's click on new, and I can just call this material wire. So this material is going to be very simple. All I'm going to do is take the base color here, and I'm going to make it a dark green. And I believe why they usually make the wires dark green is so that it'll look better in a Christmas tree, because it'll blend with the green needles in the Christmas tree. And if you want to use the same exact value that I'm using, you can go to the hex, and you can punch in a hex value of 053000. So just a very dark green, that is what I'm going to use. And I'm going to leave the roughness at 0.5. If you wanted the plastic to be more shiny, you could turn the roughness down, but I'm just going to leave it at 0.5. So that is it for the wire material. So I now want to make the glass material for the light. And I'm going to be creating a glass material that works great in both Cycles and Eevee, because the glass shader in Blender works great in Cycles, but it doesn't actually work that great in Eevee. And I want these lights to work great in both Cycles and Eevee, so I'm going to be creating a custom glass shader. So what I want to do is add the glass to this object. So if you go right over here to the material properties, I want to click on the plus here to add a new material, and then let's click on new, and I can just rename this to glass. Now I want to preview this material on the glass, so I'll press the tab key to go to edit mode. I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything, and then I'm going to hover my mouse over this object and press the L key, and that'll select the linked vertices. And then make sure you have the glass selected here in the material slot, and you can click on the assign button. So now what I want to do is tab to go back to object mode, and then to make this look like glass, I'm going to turn the transmission value all the way up to 1. And then right now it's kind of like a frosted glass. You can see that there's a lot of roughness, so I'm going to turn the roughness value all the way to 0. And then I also want to mix this material with a transparent shader. So I'm going to press Shift A, go to the search, and I'm going to search for the transparent shader. Let's stick this here. And then I want to mix these two shaders together. So I'm going to select the transparent and then hold down the Shift key and select the principled shader. I can now press Ctrl 0, and that is using a feature of the Node Wrangler add-on, and it's going to join them together with this mix shader. And then I will just leave the factor at 0.5 so it's blending between both of these. And also on the color here on the transparent and the base color on the principled, you just want to make sure that the color is fully white. So change that on the base color here and the color here on the transparent. And again, if you're just using Cycles render, you could press Shift A, go to the search, and just use the glass shader. That would work fine, but I want a glass material which works really great in Cycles and Eevee, so this is what I'm going to use. Now if I click right here on the render properties, for now I'm just going to click on Cycles, and I'm going to change this over to Blender Eevee. And then I'm going to hold down the Z button, and I'm going to move my mouse up to the rendered view. Now the lighting is really terrible because right now we're just using the default gray light in the background, so I'm going to add in an HDRI to get some nice lighting. So let's click right over here on the world properties, and if you don't already have a new world, you can click on the new button to add a new world. And I'm going to be adding in an HDRI. So right here on the color, let's click on the yellow dot, and I'm going to choose environment texture, and then we can click on open and open up the HDRI. And I'm going to be using this Christmas Photo Studio 04 HDRI. So this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com. I'll have a link in the description if you'd like to download it. And I downloaded the 1K HDR version on Polyhaven. So once you download the HDRI, you can click on it and then click on open image. And this will give us some nice lighting. You can see that looks much nicer. Or you can really use any HDRI that you want, or just some other lighting. Now in Blender Eevee, to make this glass shader look nicer, there are a few settings that we need to change. So if you go right here to the material properties, you want to open up the settings tab here in the material properties. Make sure you have the glass shader selected when you do this. And on the blend mode right here, I want to change this to alpha hashed, and on the shadow mode here, I want to change this to the alpha hashed. And this will look more realistic, and now you can actually see through the glass, and it does look quite a bit more realistic. And then also, if you click right up here on the render properties, again, this is just if you're using Blender Eevee, I want to turn on the ambient occlusion and the bloom and also the screen space reflections, and this will make Blender Eevee look more realistic. And also on the screen space reflections, if you open this up, I want to turn on the refraction, and that'll make the glass look even better. So the next material that I want to add is the emission material, and that's going to actually be emitting light. So I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode, and then I'm going to hit the 3 on the top of my keyboard to go to the face select. Or you can also scroll right over here and click on this button to go to the face select. And I want to select this face, and I actually want to bring it down a bit because it's a bit too high up. So I'll press G to grab and bring it down on the Z axis and make it a bit smaller. And then to preview this better, I'm going to hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select those loops of faces. And then I can press the H key to hide it. So now I can select this face right here, and then I want to hold down the Shift and Alt key and select the ring of faces. So I can now go back here to the material properties, and I want to click on the plus here to add a new material in the slot, and I can click on new, and I can rename this material to light. And then with those faces selected and with the light selected, I can click on the assign button, and this way the light material will be assigned to those faces. So I can now press Alt H to unhide everything. I can tab to go back to object mode, and I'm going to hold down the Z button and go up into the rendered view. So now instead of using the principled shader, I want to use the emission shader so it's emitting light. So I can click on the principled shader, I can press X to delete it, and then I can press Shift A, and let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the emission shader. Let's drop the emission shader here, and then I can put the emission into the surface. And actually, I want to rename this material to Christmas Lights. And then right here on the strength, I want to turn this way up, so I'm going to turn this to 100 so that it is much brighter. Now you can see there's that cool bloom effect that I turned on in Blender Eevee. If you're using Cycles Render, then I will show you how to add the glare node in Blender's compositor after you render the image to add that cool glare effect. But in Blender Eevee, I'm going to go right up here to the render properties, and I can open up the bloom tab here. And on the bloom settings, I can turn the radius up if I want it to be bigger, and I could also turn the intensity up as well. And also if I click right back here to the world properties, if I want to make the background world darker so you can see the glow better, you can take the strength here from the background and you can turn this way down and just make it kind of darker, so that way the background will be a bit darker and those lights will stand out more. So that is looking super cool. So we're now going to create the color variation for the lights. So I'm going to hold down the Z button and go to the rendered view so that we can see all the lights. So to create randomly different colored lights, I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the object info node. Now the object info node has this random value, and we can put the random value into the color of the emission. And so the random value is randomly going to generate colors from white to black. Now I don't want white to black, I want to have all the different colors for the Christmas lights. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for a color ramp. We can stick the color ramp after the object info, and then we can change all the colors here on the color ramp, and that'll make all the different colors. Now I don't want there to be any even blending between the colors, so I'm going to click on the linear here, and I'm going to change it to constant instead. And then I can click and drag this out and kind of bring this out there, and I want to start with a white one, but then I want to hold down the control key and click to add another tab, and then this one I want to make it really bright and make it like a purple color. You can of course create any colors that you want. I'm going to hold down the control key and click again to add another tab, and this one I'm going to make brighter, and then I'm going to make this one kind of like a dark blue. Hold down the control key, click again to add another one. Let's make this brighter, and this one is going to be like a lighter blue color, so something like that. And hold down the control key, click again, and this one is going to be like a green one, something like that, maybe slightly darker. Hold down the control key, click again, and this one, if I go to the colors here, this one is going to be a bright yellow color, something like that. And then also the last one here, click on the black one, and this one I want to make a red color, so let's make it really bright and then make it red. So now you can see that each light is randomly going to be using a different color because of the random value on the object info node. So that is really great. Now, just like we did with the geometry nodes, I want to create a custom node in the shader editor, and then I want to create a bunch of different color presets. So what I'm going to do is click and drag to box select all these nodes here, and then I can press Ctrl G, and Ctrl G will join them together into a group, and I can tab to go back to object mode or go out of the group. And then I want to rename this group, so I can click right here to rename it. And I'm going to rename this to Christmas Lights, and I can also drag it out to make it a bit longer. So now I can press the tab key to go into this group, and we can make a bunch of different color variations. Although something that I want to do is I want to put the strength into this group input here. And that way, if I tab to go out of the group, we'll be able to control the strength or the brightness of the lights. So I will tab to go into edit mode, and I want to take the strength value and let's stick that here into the group input. And then if I press the N key to open up the side panel, you can click here on the group tab and we can rename the outputs and the inputs. So right here on the strength, I'm going to double click on this to rename this, and I'm just going to add light. So it's going to be light strength. So now if I tab to go back out of this group, we have this light strength, and we can change this to change how bright we want the lights to be. So I will tab to go back into the group. And then I'm going to make this smaller so I have a bit more space, and I'm also going to drag this back a bit so I have a bit more space. So I'm now going to create all the other color variations. So what I want to do is select the color ramp and then hold down the shift key and select the emission. I'm now going to press Ctrl Shift D. So Ctrl Shift D will duplicate the nodes but keep the wires plugged up. And I can put the object info right here above the group input. I can drag these down, and then I want to put this emission into this one here. So I'm going to actually first take this one, put it into this bottom one, and then this one here I can put it into the top one. I want to add some up here and also some down here just to kind of keep them nicely organized. I'm going to have one more up here, and then this one I want to change the colors. So what I can do is hit the backspace with the color ramp selected. That's going to reset the color ramp. But then if I click on the linear, I want to change this back to the constant. So this one I want to have some light colors and some gold colors. So let's bring out the white here, and then if I click here on the black, I want to click on the color, and I'm going to make this very bright, and then I'm going to make it a little bit towards the yellow. So something like that, kind of like a yellowy orangey color, and you can see how that is looking. And then also I want to add another color here, so I'm going to hold down the control key and click to add another color. And this one I can just make this a little bit less saturated so it's a bit more white. And also this white one right here, this one I am going to make a tiny bit yellow just so that it has a little bit of yellow color. So there we go. Now we have kind of some gold or yellow colored lights. Now I want to rename the outputs, but I'm actually going to do that at the end. So I'm going to create all the color variations and then I'll rename them later. So I want to make one more up here. So I'm actually going to drag this down here and then drag this one down here. So we have another one here on the top. And then I can select the color ramp and hold down the shift key and select the emission. And I'm going to press Ctrl Shift D to duplicate it and keep the wires plugged up. And then the emission can go into this emission here. Let's also press Ctrl S to save. So now here on this color ramp, we can change the colors. And for this one, I want to have some different blue colors. So for this first color here, let's make it kind of like a light blue. That is pretty good. And then on this second color here, click on the color. And this one I'm going to make a little bit darker and a bit more saturated. And then this blue one right here, this one I want to make a pretty dark blue, so something like that. And you can look at the lights to see how it is looking. You could also hold down the Z button and go into the material preview if you don't want to like see the background. That might look a bit better because the background is a bit distracting. So now we have all those different colors. All right, so I now want to create some more down here. So I'm going to select the color ramp, hold down the shift key and select the emission. And I can press Ctrl Shift D to duplicate the nodes and keep the wires plugged up. And then I thought it would be really cool to create like a candy cane one. So different colors of white and red. So I'm going to click here on this purple color here, and I can click on the minus to get rid of it. And I'm just going to keep on clicking minus to get rid of all of these colors until we just have the white and the red. So I can now drag this red over and the white over, bring it to about there. And then I can also take this emission and I can plug this up to the bottom one. Now you can't actually see it taking effect, and that is because I need to press the tab key to go out of this group, and I want to plug it up to the bottom one. So the bottom one is going to go to the surface. And this way we can actually preview the bottom one. And you can see that's looking pretty cool. It kind of looks like candy cane because it's white and red. So I can tab to go back in edit mode, and if there's too much white or too much red, you can kind of drag this around. So if you want there to be more red, you could kind of drag this back, something like that. All right, I want to create a few more, so let's select the color ramp, hold down the shift key, select the emission, control shift D, and I'm going to bring this down here, and let's put the emission up to the next slot. And then I need a tab to go back to object mode, and I need to take the emission and plug that into the surface, and that way I can actually preview it, and then select this light again and press the tab key to go back to edit mode. And then this one, I just want to have one color, so I'm going to click here on this color and click on the minus to get rid of it, and I'm going to drag it all the way over here. And then for this color, I want to make this just kind of like a pink color, so we're going to have some pink lights, something like that. All right, let's select the color ramp, hold down the shift key, select the emission, and I can press control shift D, bring it down here. Let's also drag the group output down so I can see it better, and then the emission can go into the emission. And then again, tab to go back to object mode or to go out of the group, and we want to take the emission and let's put that into the surface. And then I can select the Christmas lights and tab to go back into edit mode of the group. So now I can change the colors of this one. So this one I want to have like some Christmas colors, so like green and red. So I'm going to drag this over here, and then I'm going to hold down the control key and click in the center there to add another one. And then this one I'm going to make like a bright red color, something like that. And then also this one here, this one I'm just going to make like a bright green color. Let's select both of these nodes and press control shift D. Let's drop that there. So now I can take the emission here and I can put that into this emission there. And then I can tab to go back to the group. I can take the emission, put that into the surface, and I can click on the Christmas lights and tab to go into the group. And let's change this one. So this one I want to have just one single color again. So I can click on this color here and hit the minus, and I can drag this over. And then this one, I'm going to click on the color here, and I'm going to make this like a light blue. So now we can rename all these. So I'm going to zoom way out, and of course you could make any more color variations that you want, but if I click and drag to make this bigger, drag this out, I can rename all these. So this first one, I actually want to make it look a bit more blue. So I'm going to click on this dark blue here and make it a bit more towards the purple. And then this one right here, click on the color, I'm going to make this a bit more blue. Let's tab to go back to the group and put the emission into the surface. And that's a bit better, although it's a bit too purple now. So if I click on this blue color, I want to make this a little bit more towards the blue. I kind of want it to be mostly blue, but just slightly purple. All right, so now we can rename all these. So I'm going to double click on this one to rename it, and I'm going to rename this one blue/purple. And the second one I'm going to rename white/yellow. And then also the third one here, I'm going to rename this one to colorful. All right, colorful. And then this next one right here, this is going to be the candy cane. And then the next one here, this one is going to be the pink one. And then we also have this Christmas colored one. So this is going to be green/red. Green/red. And then the last one here, I'm going to rename this one to light blue. Now there is one more one that I want to make, and that is going to be a custom color. So to create the custom color, I'm going to click on this emission here, but not select the color ramp. And I'm going to press Control Shift D, so it duplicates it and keep the wires plugged up. But then this color here, I want to unplug it from the color ramp. So I'm going to take the color and unplug that. And I can just drag this down here. And then I want the emission to be going into this one here, the very bottom one. And if you double click on this to rename it, I want to rename this one to custom color. Now to actually make it be a custom color, I can take the color here from the emission and I can drag this up, and I want to put it into the group input. So just put it right there. And then right here you can see it says color. So I'm going to click on this to rename it on the inputs, and I can rename this one to custom color. All right, there we go. So now if I press the tab key to go back out of the group, we can take this custom color and we can put it into the surface. And now this custom color here is going to control the lights for the custom color, because if I tab to go into the group, we have this custom color, and that is going into the emission color. So I can tab to go back out here, and then this custom color, we can just drag this around and make it any color we want. So that is super cool. Now there is one more problem, and that is that the wire is white. So let's fix that. So what I'm going to do is click right over here to the geometry nodes, and then I need to click right here on the wire, and I want to click on the Christmas lights geometry nodes, and I can press the tab key to go into the group, and I'm going to navigate right over here. So this subdivision surface, this is the wire, and then the distribute points on faces and the instance on points, those are the Christmas lights. So what I want to do is add a node in here after the subsurf to tell it to be a green color. I'm also going to go into the material preview to see this. So I can press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the set material node, and let's stick the set material after the subdivision surface. And then if you click here on the drop down, we want to choose the wire. So now it's going to give the wire that wire material. So now I can go back here to the shading tab, and on the shading workspace, I want to click right up here on this light, and I want to go here to the Christmas lights. And if it isn't selected, right over here, if you go to the material properties, you can click on the Christmas lights to select it. And I'm just going to change it back to the colorful. So I'll plug the colorful into the surface, and I can press the N key to close the side panel. And there we have it. So there is the customizable Christmas lights using geometry nodes. So then if you select the object and tab to go into edit mode, you can select the handles here and you can press E to extrude. You can extrude that out and you can scale it, and you can customize the shape of the light, and the lights are going to adapt. So you could add this to some rafters, kind of hang it on some rafters like I did in the final render. You could also add it to a Christmas tree, or you could also add it to a house, or really create any Christmas scene with the Christmas lights. Now in Blender Eevee, the bloom effect looks really good, but if you're using Cycles Render, the bloom effect doesn't work in Cycles. So if you're using Cycles, you'll need to use the glare nodes in the compositor to get that glow effect. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. So I've just added a camera, and I just pointed the camera at the lights. And then right here on the render engine, if you go over here to the render properties, we can change the render engine to cycles. And you can see there isn't that bloom effect. So I'm now just going to give this a render by pressing F12, or you can click on render and render the image. All right, so the render has finished. So we're now going to do some compositing. So let's click right up here on the compositing tab. And then we can also click on use nodes to use the compositing nodes, and also click on the backdrop there to make sure that the backdrop is turned on. So I'm first going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go here to the search, and I'm going to search for the glare node, and let's stick the glare node in between the render layers and composite. And then because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, we can Control Shift and select the glare node, and that's going to add this viewer node, and so it'll preview it in the background. And you can also press the V key to zoom out the background and Alt V to zoom in the background. So just bring that out. Now I want to add two different glare nodes because I do want to add kind of like that streaks effect, but I also just want to add a big circular glow. So I'm going to click here on the streaks, and I can change this to the fog glow. And the fog glow is going to give that really nice effect there. And you can also turn the size up to 9 if you want the size to be a bit bigger. And also here, if you click on this medium, you can change the quality. And actually I found that if you change the quality to low, it may look a little bit lower quality, but it's also going to make the glare a bit bigger. So it's going to be a bit more round. So you could do that if you want to. Or you could change the quality to high if you want it to be a bit more high quality. And when you do that, you can also see that it makes the size of the glare a little bit smaller. And also if you want to make the glow effect a lot stronger, then you can turn the light strength up in the shader. So we have the shader set to a strength of 100, but if you wanted it to be brighter, you could turn that up. So now I also want to add the other type of glare. So I'm going to select the glare, and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, and let's just stick it down here. And you can see that it's going to make it even brighter because we have two glares. So that is another way to make the glare brighter. If you want more glare, you can just add another glare node. I want to click on the fog glow, and I'm going to change it instead to the streak. And then there also is this streaks amount right here, and I want to turn this all the way up to 8 so that there are more streaks. And there we go. Now you can see it has some little star shapes. But then to make the streaks a bit less strong, you can turn this fade down, and that'll make it a bit less strong. And then of course, to get rid of some of that noise, you can press Shift A, and you can search for the denoise node, and you can add the denoise node right here. And I'm just going to set it to fast, so it goes a bit faster. So there we have it. That is how I created these customizable Christmas lights with geometry nodes. So now that you've created the Christmas lights, you could add them to so many scenes. So this is a scene that I created with the lights hanging on some rafters. So what I did is just modeled some very basic rafter objects, and then I added a wood texture to them, and I also added some nails here so that the lights can hang on the nails. And then I also added in that Christmas Studio HDRI to get some nice lighting, and also added some lights here and pointed it at the scene. And I also extruded out the lights and rotated them around to create some lights which were just going around the beams there. And if you'd like to learn how to create a Christmas tree in Blender, then you can check out my Christmas tree tutorial series that I created last year. I'll have the links in the description. And you can also check out my Christmas tutorial playlist if you'd like to watch more Christmas tutorials. And if you'd like to help support me and my YouTube channel and purchase the finished Christmas lights as well as this finished scene here, then you can get that on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page and the Blender Market, as well as some other online stores. I'll have the links in the description. And as I film this video, it's about 2 weeks till Christmas of 2022, so Merry Christmas everyone, and I hope you all have a great Christmas. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching.